Hey guys, this is a multi-character ex-listener. I hope you enjoy. This is where a listener is a doctor. It's for you to know. And yeah, hope you enjoyed the video. It was a horrible night, a horrible incident. The number one hero, Deku, had a horrible accident and was left in the hospital. Well, during his high school years, Deku has always been in the hospital, recovery nurse's office, or any place with medical help. But this is the first time he was surprised when he opened his eyes. After a horrible fight with a villain, he was knocked out completely. Well, he did win, but after he knocked down the villain, he actually got knocked out himself. You were his doctor. You were kinda new to the hospital and he had never seen you. When he opened his eyes, he saw a beautiful person and he was left in shock. They were wearing a hospital uniform, a white robe, and they looked gorgeous, completely gorgeous. He was left speechless. You immediately saw he was awake and said, "Oh, finally, you're awake. How are you feeling?" He touched his head lightly and said, "A little bit nauseous. What happened?" "Well, you got into a fight with a villain. You win, but you broke pretty much your arms and legs again. Seeing your medical history, this happened alone since high school, but it hasn't happened in a few years. How are you feeling?" He said, "Well, a little bit nauseous, I think." You laughed and said, "Yeah, that is a side effect from my quirk." He looked at you dumbfounded and asked, "May I know what's your quirk?" "Oh, yeah, I forgot to tell you," you responded. And continuing, "Well, I have a healing quirk, like recovery girls, but not exact. I need to place my hands on top of the patient, and a white light will start producing. And that light will start healing the patient. That's why your arms and legs aren't broken, just hurt a little bit. And that's why you feel nauseous. After I use my quirk, the patient is going to feel a little nauseous, so that's why." He nodded and said, "Well, how long have I to stay here?" You looked down at the paper you were holding and said, "Well, maybe a couple of days, like a week. We need to run some tests because we didn't know what the villain's quirk was, and well, the villain still is knocked out, so we cannot ask him questions. So we need to stay here in observation to see." He felt that week went by pretty quickly. All the time you were talking to him, making sure he was alright. He never felt like this with anyone. He thought, "Am I falling in love? Wait, no, that's ridiculous. I just met them a week ago." Now, it was his last day at the hospital. He had a lot of memories with you, like laughing, him telling you stories about his middle school days, high school days, and all of that. You telling him stories about your life, and all of that. He actually felt really connected to you, and he really appreciated you. So the last day of his stay, when you were checking me out, before he left the room, he said, "Hey, YN, can I ask you a question?" You looked at him dumbfounded and said, "Yeah, what is it?" "I was wondering if you wanted to go for a cup of coffee or something." You blushed intensely and said, "Well, the number one here is asking a doctor to go out with him." He looked down at the ground and said, "Yeah, I'm asking you if you want to go out with me. It's alright if you say no. You don't have to feel obligated. It's okay. You don't have to say yes." He started rambling, and you quickly grabbed on his arm and said, "Of course, I would love to go on a date with you. Just relax. Okay?" He gave you a smile, and you smiled back to him and said, "Well, now take care of yourself, Deku. We don't want you getting hurt anymore." He smiled and said, "Call me Suku. My name is Isuka Midoriya." Then he laughed. "Well," you thought to yourself, "you have a date with a number one hero." "Oh, this hurts," he thought to himself. He was in an alleyway. He just got out of a fight with some heroes, and he was barely conscious. He thought, "When is Toga and Shigaraki gonna get here? I will bleed out if they don't." He had called on his two friends to pick him up and send his location, but those two were really not showing up. He was there some minutes and he felt like hours. He felt like shit. He felt horrible, but he couldn't do anything. One of the heroes had a lightning quirk and the other one had a blade quirk. So both of them attacked him. He was electrocuted and then cut with a blade. It was horrible, so he felt really bad. After a few minutes more, he felt about to pass out, but before he could, he saw a white light and someone talking, saying, "Hey, are you okay? Can you hear me?" But before he could respond, he passed out. After what felt like an eternity and in its sleep, he opened his eyes to see a room. It was a green room, and he was on a bed. There were plants all around, and he thought to himself, "Where am I? What happened? This is not the League of Villains. Where the fuck am I?" Then someone opened the door and he almost was left speechless. They were beautiful, like an angel. He couldn't describe them. But they quickly opened up the door and said, "Hey, are you feeling okay?" He shook his head and said, "Oh, no, I got electrocuted. And where the fuck am I?" You laughed and said, "Sorry. Well, I found you in an alleyway passed out. You had a pretty bad cut, and I used my quirk to heal you. My quirk is not supposed to use by healing, but it has a part of healing, so I kinda used it." He looked down at his cut, and there were plants on it. He asked, "What the fuck is your quirk?" "Oh, sorry," you responded, and then proceeded to explain. "Well, I can control plants, but some plants have medical uses, so I use one of the plants that had medical uses to close off the wound, and the liquid that the plant produces will help your wound solve, but you have to rest for a couple of days. Do you need me to drop you off somewhere?" He thought to himself for a moment. He knew he couldn't tell you to take him to the League of Villains, and he was still hurt. His head still felt like horrible, and he couldn't stand up. He said, "I live out of town. I don't think you can get there. Can I stay here for a few days? I promise I won't cause any trouble." You laughed and said, "Of course. I'm a doctor, so my job is to help people, isn't it?" Then you proceeded to leave the room. Dabi thought to himself, "Wait, they are a doctor? And they are supposed to help people?" He always thought that the only heroes were the ones who were evil and always chasing down villains, since he had that image of his father. But in his eyes, and what he saw, the couple of days he was with you, you were a true hero in his eyes. You were a doctor that worked in a local clinic not so far away from your apartment that was full with plants. And everything was green, and he thought it was really beautiful. And he thought you were really beautiful. It was a Friday night, and you were right beside him in the bed, checking up his injury. You said, "Well, look at that, Dabi. I think your injury is ready to go. So I think you can leave tomorrow. What do you think? Do you feel okay?" He nodded and said, "Hey, Ryan, right?" You nodded. "Can I ask you something?" You nodded again. He said, "Okay, I'm not usually the person who does this, but I really like you, so I would love to take you on a date someday. I know you don't look the best, but you stopped him by giving him a kiss, and he kissed back quickly. It quickly turned into a make-out session, but it quickly ended, and you said, "Of course I would love to go on a date with you. I have been hoping you asked me this the weeks you were here." He laughed and said, "Yeah, sorry about that. My head was in the right condition at the moment, but I'll take you on a date someday, promise." Well, he wasn't expecting this to happen. Zero knew he shouldn't use a lot of his tape, since he learned that in training camp. When he used a lot, he can easily get hurt and be useless in battle, in his opinion, but he wasn't useless. He was left at a hospital while his friends were all fighting villains. And as a superhero, his responsibility was to be out there, but he was stuck here. A lot of nurses came in the room and said, Mr. The doctor will be here any minute. Do you need anything? Water? He shook his head and said, thank you very much, but I don't need anything. I just need to get out there and fight villains, since we're basically in the middle of battle out there. The nurses shook their heads and said, sorry sir, we cannot let you go out there. It's too dangerous. And you already use your quirk a lot. You save a lot of civilians. You don't need to go out there anymore. You already did your job. But he wasn't satisfied. He wanted to go out there, keep fighting, keep being a hero, but he was right. He used all his tape saving some civilians and making sure all the schools and buildings that were close by were secure. And already he wasn't feeling that great. So he sighed and said, okay, I'll stay here, I promise. He then went back to thinking that he should be out there fighting like his friends, but he had to accept this. Some moments later, someone opened the door. It was a beautiful person in his opinion. Someone that brought calm to the room. As soon as you entered, it felt so heavenly, so amazing. He asked, are you supposed to be my doctor, right? You nodded and said, hello, I'm Guayan. A pleasure to meet you. He shook your hand and you said, well, let me shake your arms. I understand your quirk is basically tape, so I need to check where your arms to see how they are. He then let you saw his arms and you started checking up on him. You said, oh, that doesn't look good. Okay, look, I will use my quirk if you allow me to heal that. Or do you want to just go the traditional way? Because I can heal this right up and you can go out there fighting, or do you want to stay some 5 days for you to recover? Because it's not that severe, but you can start bleeding out any moment now, since it looks pretty bad, since you overused your quirk. He thought for a moment. He was left speechless when he saw you. And he wanted to spend more time with you, even though he just met you, and he didn't understand why. But he shook his head and said, no, I prefer not to use your quirk. Many people will start coming to the hospital soon, right? The villain fight is really bad, and a lot of civilians have been severely hurt. Just use your quirk on them, because I know you also can overuse your quirk, and I don't want that. I can stay. As a hero, I will stay and take the 5 days of recovery needs. Go help civilians. You nodded and said, okay. Thanks for that. We have the emergency room full of civilians right now. That villain fight looks pretty bad. I hope the heroes can do that. And thank you. You did a pretty amazing job. My little brother goes to one of the schools nearby, and I heard you actually saved the school. Thank you. He nodded, and you went out of the room. He was left a blushing mess, actually. He never felt like this. Obviously, I had a couple of partners, a couple of dates, but no one made him feel like this. And it was weird. He just met you. The few following days, he felt so nice, so relaxed. You explained your quirk, and one of the things of your quirk, it made people relax around you, since it was a lot of positive energy and all of that. He didn't understand quite completely your quirk because it was healing, but also affect people emotionally, to feel them feel relaxed. But he didn't understand, and he didn't care. He just thought being with you was wonderful. After his release, you guys exchanged numbers and kept in contact. After texting and some calls, he actually got the courage and asked you on a date. You guys went to the amusement park, had an amazing time, and after that was done, he said, "Hey, Wayan, I have a question for you." You look at him and said, "What is it?" Would you like to be my significant other, please?" You blushed, and he didn't know if you're gonna say yes or no, so he was very nervous. But you just gave him a hug and whispered in his ear, "Of course that's a yes. I've been waiting for you to ask me that." He felt horrible. He was sick. He had a fever. The League of Villains had a doctor, someone that joined. They proclaimed they didn't have a quirk, they were quirkless, but they could help with injuries and all that, and help around the league. So he accepted. He slowly, since he met you, he started falling in love with you. Slowly. It had not really been like 9 months since you joined, and Shigaraki was all done. He was falling in love with you. He didn't want anyone else. He only wanted you. But right now he was sick, and all the members were in a mission, and he couldn't go, so he was quite angry. You were the only one left. You were always there at the lake, preparing medicine and all the things they need when they came back. So you were taking care of him. Shigaraki was trying really hard not to blush in front of you, but when you saw him blushing, you actually thought it was just a fever and said, "Hey, Shigaraki, is your fever getting worse? You're pretty red. Let me see." You touched his forehead and he got red like a tomato, horribly. And you said, "Oh my god, you're getting pretty worse. I should go look for medicine. Okay, wait here." You went out of the room and Shigaraki calmed himself down, thinking, "Okay, this is not the time for this. I cannot be acting like this right now." After a few moments, you came back in the room with some medicine and some cold towels to put in his forehead. You placed the towel on his forehead and said, "Okay, now rest. I will go make you some soup, okay?" He nodded and just turned back to sleep. He felt pretty relaxed, pretty calmed down. With you close, he felt amazing, and even though he was sick and angry because he couldn't go on a mission, your presence just made him calm down. He was awoken by you with some soup. You said, "Here you go, Shigaraki. I made some soup for you. You need anything else?" He laughed and said, "No, that's okay. You shouldn't be worrying about me so much, you know." You blushed and looked away, saying, "Yeah, but I'm the doctor of the league. I should be taking care of you." He sighed and said, "Whatever." He continued to eat his soup, and you just stared at him, while reading some magazines and checking his temperature. After a few hours, you spent talking to him, and just talking about anything and everything, just feeling good. He caught up the courage and asked, "Hey, Ryan, are you dating someone?" You blushed and started putting your hands in your face and said, No, I could never date anyone, but I do have a crush on someone." He was interested now and said, "Wait, who?" You shook your head and said, "I can tell you. I shouldn't tell someone who I like." He just laughed and said, "Hey, I'm sick right now, and you're my doctor. You should do anything I need you to, so tell me who you like, please." You just covered your face with your hands and said, "I like you. I have liked you since you're in the league, but I didn't know how to tell you, and now I feel like an idiot and you're sick. Please just forget I said anything." But he grabbed on your hand and said, "Really? That was it?" You just looked down and said, "Yeah." He was careful when he grabbed your hand, careful not to use his quirk, and he said, "I like you too, and I like you a lot. I wouldn't be saying this, and I think I only have the courage to do it since I'm sick, but thank you, Ryan, and I like you too. Do you want to go on a date someday? I don't know. Maybe we can go to that festival Chowa was bragging about." You nodded and said, "Of course I would love to go." "I'm an idiot or what?" he thought. He was in Recovery Girl's office because, well, another villain attack happened and he had to protect the students, and he won. But he was left severely injured with a lot of burns thanks to Dabi. But they were only his legs and his arms. Nothing too bad, things that could easily heal. But Recovery Girl was in a conference in another school. She wasn't here, so she couldn't help him, and he couldn't go to do his work to teach class. And the hospitals were full right now, so he couldn't go there either. Nezu had recommended him to just go to Recovery Girl's office and he will send someone. He already waited like 2 hours and he was getting impatient. But quickly, someone opened the door saying, "Hey, I'm sorry I'm late. They called me and I was all way out of town and had to come here. And it was just such a mess." He looked up to see someone he had never seen before. They were a hospital uniform and he thought, "Who is this?" And then he asked, "Who are you? I've never seen you around." You took your breath quickly and you said, "Hello, I'm Wayan. I'm the new assistant to recovery girl. I work at our local hospital, but since your school is getting so many villain attacks, recovery girl cannot attend them all herself, and I can help her out, so that's why." He looked you up and down and thought you were gorgeous, but he didn't say anything and continued. "Well, I have some burns. Can you get rid of that?" You quickly nodded and went to sit right next to the bed. You took off your gloves and proceeded to place your hands up top of the burns. Quickly, a white light started covering his arms and his legs quickly, and after a few seconds, you took off your hands off his arm and said, "All done." He looked down to see his body and he saw, "Wait, I don't feel any burns and I feel so much better." But he went to see how you were doing, and you seemed a little tired. He asked, "Hey, are you okay?" You shook your head and said, "Well, my career can help people and give energy to people. Broadly left me a little tired, and since you had a lot of burns, I had to take care of you a lot. I usually don't get this tired, but I was at a local hospital this morning, and I used my quirk a lot, so I feel a little nauseous now." He nodded and said, "Just relax. Do you want a cup of water or something?" You agreed, and he stood up from the bed feeling so much better, like nothing happened, and went to look for a bottle of water. After a few seconds, he returned to your room and handed it to you, and you said, "Thanks, I really needed it." You started drinking the water, and he just sat right next to you and said, "Well, since we're gonna start working together, I should introduce myself. I'm Eraserhead, but most people here call me Mr. Aizawa or Aizawa. You can call me wherever you want." You nodded and said, "Well, I am Wayan. I already told you that. I used to work at a local hospital, but recovery girl needed help, so I'm here. I already explained that. Sorry for saying it again." He laughed, but you felt embarrassed. After a few months of working together, Aizawa developed a little crush on you. Well, a huge crush. Even his students started to notice, because every time you came into a classroom to check up on someone who had an injury, or Aizawa had to take one of his students to your infirmary, they always noticed how he blushed and became suddenly more nervous around you. So Mina and Yayurosu made a plan to trap you both in an office so you can talk, which they did. They tricked you to be close in the infirmary. You sighed and said, "These students' pranks are not funny. I want to go back home. I'm tired. I used my quirk a lot today because recovery girl wasn't here, and Midoriya broke all his bones again. That kid is gonna die someday, and I will not be there to help him. He has broken his fucking bones like 5 times this week. 5, Mr. Aizawa. 5. He laughed and said, "You'll get used to it. I see this like 8 times a week. Don't worry." You sighed and said, "I hope I get used to it." After a few minutes of slightly talking, Aizawa brought the courage to say, "Hey, do you have something to do after we get out of here?" You shook your head and said, "Well, I was planning to go home with my cat and watch some movies. Nothing special." He laughed and said, "Same, but do you want to go have some drinks after work?" You smiled and said, "So, Aizawa, are you asking me on a date?" He looked away and said, "Well, yeah, what do you say?" You laughed and said, "Of course I will love to go on a date with you." And after you guys finally went out, you guys went on a date, and it was pretty nice. Well, being an underground hero has benefits and something like this now. He was left at a hospital, He had a fight with some underground villains that no one knew about but were extremely powerful and now were known over the media. And he was left severely injured. He captured one of them, but the other one escaped, so he was pretty mad. He was at the hospital and he didn't feel like being here. He thought, this is useless. He knew all the doctors here because he had already came to see Midoriya a lot of times and also came to see Kaminari a lot of times. But he never thought his friends would be the ones to have to come see him because he was never someone to go to hospitals and get injured and all of that. Kaminari was right next to him saying, "Hey, don't be bad. You captured one of them. And being at the hospital isn't bad. There's a really cute doctor. Should I introduce you to? I think they are the doctor this time, aren't they?" Shinso sighed and said, "I haven't met my doctor. I just opened my eyes and saw some nurses and they said my doctor had made a surgery and they will come shortly." Then Monoma exclaimed, "Well, I have already been here a couple of times thanks to Tendo's bad temper, and I can say they are pretty cute." Tendo then smacked his head and said, "Hey, it wasn't about my bad temper. You didn't calculate well your attack, and the villain really just hit you, and you were left unconscious. And I was there to help your sorry ass. Don't tell the people it was my fault you ended up here." All the people in the room started laughing and giggling, and Monoma exclaimed, "Oi, shut up! It wasn't that thing. I'm still better than all of you." Shinso sighed and said, "I don't want to be here. This is a waste of my time. I should be tracking down the new villain that just appeared out of nowhere. I don't fucking know where the villain appeared and I didn't calculate it." Then Kaminari intervened. "Hey, calm down, friend. You don't need all this pressure on you. Let's wait for the doctor, okay?" He sighed and said, "Whatever, I just want to go home." Then, some minutes after, you entered, saying, "Excuse me, this is Shinso Hitoshi's room, right?" They all nodded and said, "Hey, YN!" exclaimed Kaminari. You waved at him and also at Monoma. You had been their doctor a couple of times before, and then you proceeded to talk to Shinso. "You're Shinso Hitoshi, right? You had a lot of injuries. I did a surgery on you, so we need to check up on that and the recovery for that. So the recovery for your leg will take a couple of weeks, approximately a month for you to know, because I used my quirk for the surgery, but I couldn't extract all the venom the villain applied. So I could save your leg and this will completely work, but we need to train it a little bit and do some recovery on it, okay?" He nodded and said, "Well, I'll be monitoring your recovery, so the therapist with me. And yeah, if you need anything, just click that button and a nurse or me will come right up." You waved goodbye at all the people in the room because you knew most of them since you were a very known doctor in the hospital, and then left. Shinso looked at both of them and said, "Wait, I have come to see a lot of you people in this hospital and I never met them." Kaminari laughed and said, "You don't like Dr. Shinso, so you never came when the real doctors were here. You only saw my recovery doctor that's a very good person, and you never met my surgery doctor who was them, who just exited the room. And same was for Monoma. We both were treated by them, but really they never got our recovery. It's the first time I see them doing some recovery work. Maybe they feel sorry for you." All the people started giggling, and Shinso just said, "Shut up." After all they left, Shinso was left thinking about you, how beautiful you were, how smart you were, and he thought to himself, "Wait, I'm sounding like a slump. I shouldn't do this." And then he went back to sleep. He thought the month went quickly and fast. He didn't want this month to end. He had gotten pretty attached to you and really liked you. So in his last day, he said, "Hey, YN, may I ask you something?" You nodded and said, "What do you want, Shinso?" "Well, I was wondering, there's a hero gala coming soon, and I need someone to go with me. Do you want to go?" You agreed and said, of course. Well, that's a really fancy first date, you know. And he just shook his head and said, oh, wait, yeah, I think it's a first date. You just laughed and said, well, just text me the direction and what I should wear. Bye-bye, Shinso. And then you left. He was very excited for the Silver Gala, and it was the only thing he was looking up to in this new event.